Let's get back to the unsealed filing from Jack Smith laying out the election interference case against Donald Trump. It is in response to the Supreme Court's ruling on presidential immunity. Smith writes, quote, although the defendant was the incumbent president during the charged conspiracies, his scheme was fundamentally a private one. Working with a team of private co-conspirators, the defendant acted as a candidate when he pursued multiple criminal means to disrupt, through fraud and deceit, the government function by which votes are collected and counted, a function in which the defendant, as president, had no official role, Smith continues. And when all else had failed on January 6, 2021, the former president directed an angry crowd of supporters to the United States Capitol to obstruct the congressional certification. Smith also writes that forensic evidence from the defendant's iPhone and observations by witnesses testifying about unofficial acts establishes that Trump was on Twitter and watching television in the Oval Office during the riot at the Capitol. The filing also reveals some new details, including a conversation between Trump and his family members after the election, which was overheard by a White House staffer. The former president reportedly told them, quote, it doesn't matter if you won or lost the election. You still have to fight like hell. Let's bring in former U.S. attorney and MSNBC contributor Barbara McQuade and NBC News legal analyst and former federal prosecutor Andrew Weissmann. Andrew, we'll start with you. What stood out here in this filing, and what do you make of it? Is it a solid case to make?
You know, even with, as you noted, the Supreme Court requiring Jack Smith to truncate his proof to only use witnesses who are private witnesses or people in public office but acting in a private capacity as a candidate, even with that limitation that you can't use any evidence from people who are acting in an official capacity at the White House or elsewhere. This is sort of body blow after body blow with really shocking evidence. I am old enough to remember Watergate, which was a scandal about cheating and trying to find out what it is that your opponent knew through illegal means and covering that up. This is so much worse. It lays out an effort to undermine and thwart the votes of millions and millions of people just to stay in office. And the evidence is coming from Donald Trump's own people, his own lawyers, his own campaign staff, and most notably, his own vice president, who had every incentive to want to win that election, but decided to act out of principle and follow the rule of law. So this is a read that is so graphic, so devastating, and so dispiriting that this is where the country is when these allegations are the kind of thing that the normal laws of gravity would have people understanding that this person should never be in office again, based on this really detailed exegesis of the facts around what Donald Trump did.
Barbara, there are some new details in here, some new quotes, as Andrew suggests. Many of them seem to be coming from recognizable voices like Vice President Mike Pence, a suggestion that Steve Bannon is one of the people in here, that Rudy Giuliani, perhaps not that there's testimony from them, but that they are quoted as making some comments around January 6th and the lead up to that day. I'm curious what stood out to you here. And also, is there something new? I mean, we know we had an entire long session and hearing and report from the January 6th committee that laid this out chapter and verse. We know that a lot of the testimony did, in fact, come from Republicans, the people closest to Donald Trump, who couldn't believe what they were seeing on January 6th and had to tell someone about it and testify. What do you see in this report, and do you think it makes a convincing case to Judge Chutkan?
Yes, I think what stands out is the strength of the corroborating evidence. We know this story essentially from what we heard before the January 6th Congressional Committee, but prosecutors have tools different from what Congress has, additional tools, grand jury subpoenas, search warrants, and from those things, they can get verbatim testimony of people who may have declined to go before the congressional committee. And with those search warrants, they could get the content of text messages and email messages and even voicemail messages, the verbatim transcripts of which show up in this filing. And so from some of those things, we know that there were people on the inside telling Donald Trump, this is BS. Another Michigan official saying, this is effing nuts. And yet Donald Trump continues to proceed with this. That's important because one of the elements here will be that Donald Trump engaged in fraud. That means he knew what he was saying was wrong. There is even a quote that you mentioned earlier, overheard when Donald Trump is telling family members, overheard by an Oval Office staffer, where he says, even if you lose the election, you still have to keep fighting. I think those kinds of details will help this case withstand cross-examination at trial and perhaps the skepticism of 12 jurors who have to be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that this defendant is guilty.